Hi everyone and welcome to this new webinar dedicated to behavior-driven development. So today we're going to see how to kickstart your first BDD project with Hiptest. Just before, a few words about the team. I'm Laurent, the product manager of Hiptest, and I will run this session together with Vincent. Vincent is a developer and one of the main contributors of Hiptest Publisher, which is an open source application that enables to generate scripts and integrate with the continuous integration. So we'll see that later on. So what's Hiptest? Hiptest is first a test management platform in the cloud. Well, in the cloud today, but will be soon available on premises. So basically it enables you to create, manage, and track execution and the life cycle of your test. And it's also a behavior-driven development framework. We wanted to bring the best of the two worlds inside one unique platform. So now I'm going to give a brief introduction about the behavior-driven development approach, the main concepts, and then Vincent will run a demo based on a coffee machine application. So yes, we'll all drink virtual coffee during this session. Basically, Vincent will show you the whole process from getting a new story from the marketing, refining this story into acceptance test, executing this acceptance test manually, and then automating it and integrating this as part of the CI process. So, BDD. This is my favorite definition in one tweet by Dan North. BDD is using examples at different levels to create a shared understandings among all the stakeholders and surface uncertainty to deliver software that matters. So basically, this is the process of refining a story with acceptance tests, with examples, and these acceptance tests define the boundaries of the feature to be developed. And this process of refining the story into acceptance test will support the discussions between the three amigos, between the product owner, the developer, the tester, to create that shared understanding. And the great thing with these examples, once they are automating, is that they represent the living documentation, the living specification of the application, so that you know in real time, after each build, what works, what doesn't, in something that is readable by all the stakeholders, that is understandable by all the teammates. So here is a quick overview of a process at Hiptest. We do BDD and we eat our own dog food. So first, before adding a new story in the sprint backlog, we make sure that its acceptance tests have been defined. Typically, it is done during a backlog grooming session with the product team and the dev team. All together, we make sure that we have a shared understanding of what we should build. And for this, we use Hiptest and design the examples, the acceptance tests related to this story. Then, during the sprint itself, the story is implemented by the dev team. They are driven by these acceptance tests. And once the criteria are met, they can push the code in the repository. The next step is the job of the CI, the continuous integration, that creates the build, extract the last definition of all the tests from Hiptest, execute them, and push the results back into Hiptest. Of course, if all the tests pass, the build is automatically deployed in production. Otherwise, we have to investigate and fix the bug. At Hiptest, we typically have between 5 to 10 deployments a day in production. So that gives you an overview of our own process. Now, when it comes to automate the examples, the acceptance test, we have this layered approach that has proven to be really efficient and scale when you have more and more tests to maintain. So at the higher level, you have the business layer, and then the technical layer. At the business layer level, so you have your scenarios using the Gherkin syntax, given when then. These scenarios are designed using steps. These steps define the business terminology shared by the team. So every step will be reusable from one scenario to another. And because in Hiptest we have the autocomplete feature that will enable you to design new scenario using this consistent business terminology. Each of these steps have to be implemented. This is what we call the test fixture, and now we are at the technical layer. To implement the steps, you can use patterns like page object, and when it comes to implement the steps, the test fixture, you can, depending on the level of automation you want to achieve, use things like Selenium WebDriver to do a UI testing, or call directly the API if you want to automate at the API level. So that's really up to you. You should try to automate mostly at the API level. That will make your tests run faster, but you also should have some tests at the UI level, of course. So I'm done for this introduction about behavior-driven development. I suggest now to start the demo, and I will give the word to Vincent. Vincent, that's up to you.
Okay, thanks, Laurent. So I'm going to make a quick demo of the possibilities offered by Hiptest for the BDD. So first, for this demo, just to explain briefly, I'm gonna take a few different roles to be able to show all the possibilities. So that would be, at the first, I'll be acting as the product owner of the application, then I'll act as a manual tester, then as a developer or the people responsible for the automation, and at last I'll play the role of the continuous integration tool. So I'll try to make it clear about who I am when I do the demo. But first I'm going to introduce the project used for this demo. So it's a coffee machine, an automated espresso coffee machine, so the ones you have where you put the raw coffee beans and makes pretty good coffee. If you're used to have this kind of coffee machine at home or at work, you know that half of the time when you want to get a coffee, it's complaining because, yeah, you need to put some more water, or you need to put some more beans, or you need to remove the the coffee waste and stuff like that. So this project displays that. So the normal case or nominal case, so as a coffee lover, of course, I can get coffee from the machine, so I can enjoy the rest of the day. And let's have a look at one simple use scenario, like I start a coffee machine, I take a coffee, and I should get one. And as I said, so that's the kind of machine that always complains. So, okay, you're missing some water, so after lots of coffee, you get a message saying you need to fill the water tank, or you need to fill the beans tank. So that's a simple project, and we've made some equivalent of this kind of coffee machine for the demo, because we won't start a real coffee machine because it's really, really noisy. So first thing first about the project, you might see that it's all the scenarios are sorted in different folders. if you are used to Cucumber, in Hiptest, we consider a folder as being a feature file. So that's why the description looks like as I can, so I, which is the classical way in BDD to describe a full feature. One important thing when you want to do a BDD with Hiptest is to enable a project, enable the BDD mode on a project. So this way it will ease the automation and the way you're writing your scenarios. So yeah, let's take for example, we have in our Jira board a new issue that arrived about some descaling. So as Laurent says, that's the marketing who created this new story, and yeah, we'll do the possible to get it working. So the new story is, as a coffee lover, once again, I have to descale the machine sometimes so my coffee still tastes good. So the marketing guys just added that to Jira, and now I'll play the role of the product owner, and I'm going to add some tests about that. So what I'm going to do is not, in that case, create a new folder. I'm just going to create a new a new scenarios in the error messages feature. So just to explain quickly, so the error messages is where you try to have a coffee, but yeah, you get errors saying you need to do some stuff. So let's create this new scenario. So machine needs to be descaled after some times. And I'm just going to copy paste this description to my new scenario. It's just plain text, but always good to have available. So I'm going to write these new scenarios describing this case. So given, yep, should be that. Given the coffee machine is started, so it will be something like when I take 500 coffees or something like that, I will get a message. When I take 500 coffees, I will get a message saying descaling needed. As you can see, we can use auto-completion to help writing the test. Here I forgot to say to add the annotation then. It's still possible to change it after typing and completing your scenario. Another thing is, this scenario is nice, it's pretty basic, but I would need something more, like saying, okay, that might, the time between two descaling might depend, let's say, on the water hardness. So what I'm going to do is create a new action word that will describe this case. So I'm going to add it just after the given part, and I'll say, okay, I create a new action word. So I set water hardness to say something like A. That's the European annotation, or at least French annotation, ABC, for the hardness of the water. So of course we don't have this keyword, this action word available yet, because we haven't done anything about descaling. So I can create a new action word that will be available next time I need to do a test that involves water hardness. What you can see too is that I'm using double quotes around the A, so that will create a parameter. So I will be able to reuse it and say I set water hardness to B or C, and we'll see that just after. So now I'm creating a new action word. which is there. So I set water hardness to A. One thing that could be interesting would be to say, okay, but if I can set the water hardness, the descaling message will change depending on yeah, the number of depending on the water hardness, the number of coffees to get the descaling is needed message will change. So what I'm going to do now is use a data table. So a data table, basically it's a set of parameters, and that will generate different tests from a single scenario. So I will need two parameters in this scenarios or in this data table. The first one being the water hardness, and the second one being the number of coffee. And now I'm going to add three new datasets. Three new datasets. So, like when you've got really soft water, medium water, and hard water. And no, so that corresponds to different water hardnesses. So soft will be A, hard water will medium will be B, and hard will be C. And so for the soft water, we can say something like, okay, for soft water, you only need descaling after 500 coffee. For the medium water, it will be after 1000 coffee. Oh, sorry, it should be the other way around. For the medium water, it would be 250 coffees, and for really hard water, every 100 coffee, you need to do some descaling. And now what I'm going to do is use those parameters created for the scenario in my action words. So instead of saying set water hardness to A, I'll set it to the parameter I created just before. And here, same thing for the number of coffees. So now if I take a quick look at the tests generated from this single scenario, I should have three of them. So here, for example, this one will be called, the first test will be called for soft, so based on the dataset name we have here. So for the soft water, so it's set to A and it's only 500 coffees. For the second one's water is set to B and 250 coffee, and of course for hard, same principle, C and only 100 coffee. So my scenario is ready, and I've got a nice set of tests to describe it. Now, of course, as it's ready, what I want to do is to link it with Jira. So this way, it's we'll have a link between the two tools, so Hiptest and Jira. So doing that is, yeah, that simple. So if I go back to Jira, you can see here when my issue is opened that I've got the Hiptest plugin installed, and all I need to do is, I said it's that simple, drag and drop, link, and now my scenario is linked to the Jira project. So I can open the Hiptest scenario directly from Jira. So if I click here, and it's working the other way around too. Here, the same principle. From my scenario, I can simply click on this link and get the Jira issue opened again. So I will close those because after I will end up with 1000 tabs, and that will not be really, really interesting. So, as I said, as the product owner, my role is kind of done now. So I took the Jira issue, I created a scenario, and that should be ready to run. So now I'm going to play the role of a manual tester. So for the demo, I won't play the scenario I just described right now, because watching me taking 500 coffee will not be really, really interesting for you, I think. So we'll play some more simple test. So now if I open the test one, what I'm going to do is create a new sprint for this demo. So it's going to be the sprint number 4. I created. You can see here it's spinning right now. What is happening at this exact moment is that Hiptest is making a copy of the existing scenarios and action words and copying them into the test run. So this way, the product owner, for example, can keep on working on the scenarios, creating new ones or modifying them, while the manual tester can do their work without getting half-finished scenarios or things that are being written right now. So what I'm going to play, the first test I'm going to play as a manual tester will be the simple use test. So let's have a look at the test, which is pretty simple. So I start the coffee machine, setting the language. I take a coffee and coffee is served. So let's see if it works. So in Hiptest, there is 2 ways to run the test. The first one will be step by step, which is the one I'm going to do. So I can say for each step if it worked or not, or a more global way to set the result. So let's do first the step-by-step example. So I start the coffee machine using language English, so language is good. I start my coffee machine. Okay, so that worked. Take a coffee. Yes, sir. Okay, so click on take a coffee, work. And coffee is served. Let's check it. Yeah, I've got coffee. Okay, so that's an example of step-by-step execution of the test. But as I said, there's also a way to do it more globally. Let's say on those tests. So it's a really intelligent coffee machine and you can set the language when you start it. So let's first have a look at the French one. So start the coffee machine using language French and displayed message is prêt, which means ready in French. So setting French, start the coffee machine, saying the correct word. So it's, as I said, that's important to add a status. So here I've got a status for the full test. Let's have a look at the second one, which is the same test in English. So start the coffee machine in English. Message should be ready. English is good. Start ready. Same principle. Okay, adding a result. Now what you could see here is that the scenario behind this test was linked to a Jira issue. So the good thing is that the tests that were generated also get a link to Jira, and from this test I can open my Jira issue here, and I directly have, so the issue is messages are based on language, and I've got for the sprint 4 I can see that the test passed in English and in French. So just one more thing about the manual testing, because I only displayed working cases. That's not always the case, sadly. When you add a result, you can also add some description, of course, like in any other test management tool. So here you can describe what happened exactly, and you can also add some attachments like a screenshot or anything useful to explain why the test has been described as failed. So that was for the manual testing part. So now what I'm going to do is get back to the test I created just before, so about the scaling. And I'm going to play a new role, which is the one of the developer or the person that is responsible for automating the test. So here you can see we've got an automation page. So we support a few languages, no, quite a lot technically. for the export. So any of those links, images, when you click on them, you will get a zip file containing the skeleton for your test ready to be implemented and automated. Of course, for the demo, I won't start the process from scratch and implement everything, because it would be as interesting as seeing me clicking 500 times on the take a coffee button. So what I'll do is we already prepared this webinar, and I already have the test automated, at least part of them, not the one I just created before, because yeah, I just created it in front of you. So to do that in the process, for the automation, we use a tool which is called Hiptest Publisher. It's open source, and it's so it generates the test scripts and the skeleton for the action word that will be implemented. So it's the same tool that is used behind those images. And to use this tool, what we need is a configuration file. So you don't have to write it manually, because it's already available here. So from any of those links, you've got a base configuration file to use Hiptest Publisher. So for the demo, I'm going to automate the test using Cucumber Ruby. So I would simply click on this little cloud link, and I would get a configuration file, but it's already there. So here it is. So I've got my configuration file here. So saying the language, where I output the test, and other various configuration. So what I'm going to do is use Hiptest Publisher to regenerate the feature files, so the test script and the steps definition. So if you're not familiar with Cucumber, the steps definition is a file that is used to match the sentences in plain English or whatever language and the code that automates it. So let's generate it. So Hiptest Publisher, I use my configuration file, and what I'll say is I'll just regenerate the features and the step definitions. Okay, so now I've regenerated all my files. As I said previously, each folder in Hiptest will become a feature file in Cucumber, or in the generated code. So if I take the nominal case folder we had before, so I've got my description here. So as a coffee lover, I can get coffee and enjoy my day. I've got the first scenario, which was the simple use one. So I start the coffee machine, take a coffee, get a coffee. And the other one that was about the testing the internalization of the coffee machine. And I should have now the error messages feature, and I see the feature, the test I created just before. So about the descaling, so machine needs to be descaled after some times. I start the coffee machine, I set the water hardness, I take some coffees, and I should get a message. So let's give this little test a try. So I'm going to execute the test, and surprisingly the descaling test has failed. That was predicted. And of course, oh, I don't know what is I set water hardness. Yeah, of course, because I created a new action word. So obviously I need to implement it. I mean, there is no magic. So Hiptest Publisher can help us doing this job, because it doesn't generate every time the full list of action word, because that would be a real pain to maintain. So what we can do is say, okay, Hiptest publisher using my configuration file again, and I'll ask it to show me what has happened since last time I generated the action words. So show me the difference. Okay, there's a new action word. Once again, that was predictable. So what I'll ask him is, okay, show me the skeleton for the action words that have been created. So I can simply copy paste the code it generates. Sorry, it's hardly readable. That's my terminal settings. And I can simply, yeah, so copy paste this new definition in my list of action words. Here we should do something, of course, we want. And now if I run the test again, the test should again fail because we didn't do anything about the descaling. And now what would be nice for me would be to save the file where I added the code. Okay, so the test have failed, but that's logical because, okay, we're expecting some message about the descaling. We didn't get because we were supposed to fill the bins, etc. But at least the principle is here. As I said, we just created the test for the demo, and that's yeah, I won't do the full implementation about how to do descaling in the coffee machine. That was just to explain briefly how it worked, and yeah, watching me implement some action words and some code in the coffee machine would not be of much interest for the demo. So let's imagine for a second that, yeah, the test worked because, yeah, I did my job. I did the implementation for the descaling and the implementation for the the action word to set the water hardness and stuff like that. So what we should do now, considering the tests are working, is to go back to my scenario, which is there, and say, okay, this test is ready. It's passing, it's working. So I can add it to a test run we have here, which is dedicated to the continuous integration tool. So I just add the scenario to the test run. It's synchronizing with the actual content of the project. And now if I go to the continuous integration test run, I see 3 tests are undefined. Of course, continuous integration hasn't kicked in yet. And that's a good transition because that's exactly what I'm going to do right now, is play the role of the continuous integration. So for this coffee machine project, we use Travis CI, but I won't use it for the demo because sometimes it takes some time for the build to kick in, like 10 or 15 minutes sometime, and I don't have enough funny stuff to say to keep you busy for 15 minutes. So what I'll do, is play the role of the continuous integration tool. So let's have a look at how we configured our continuous integration tool. So what we can see is that before starting the test, we use Hiptest publisher again. And what we do is say, okay, fetch the tests from the test run dedicated to the CI. So yeah, let's do that. So it's fetching the test. Cool. Then the second part of the continuous integration tool is is to run the test. So once again, they should fail, I know. So let's run all those new tests. You don't see the failure, but that's normal. And the last part, so after the script has been run, is to take the results that have been generated. So I don't know if it's readable here, but we use the JUnit XML as output format. And what we are going to do is use Hiptest Publisher again to push the results back to Hiptest. So of course there's no copy-paste needed in the real life with the scripts, but that's just for the debug. And as you can see, so that was okay, and the results have been pushed to Hiptest. No need to reload. We just go back to Hiptest and we see, yeah, we've got 3 tests that have failed. What was the problem exactly? Yeah, here we can see status failed, and yeah, we were expecting descaling is needed, but we had field beans instead, which is exactly the same thing we had just before. And if you remember, when I created the scenario, I linked it to Jira. And of course, when we do the synchronization, and when we added the scenario to the test run, it carried over the link to Jira, so I can open my issue again now. And directly from the Jira issue, I can see the status of the test from the CI, or at least what the CI gave to Hiptest. So here I can see that for the CI process, thing failed. And of course in sprint 4, which was the manual one, I didn't run it. So that covers, yeah, most of the process of the BDD. If you have any question, we are listening to you. Thanks for listening to me.